We will get ourselves rolling. And welcome everybody. My name is Tom Bentham. I am with Indivisible Sonoma County, which is one of the sponsoring groups that is doing this meeting to meet and hopefully donate to Randy. I want to go ahead and just do a couple of opening remarks here with a slide or two. So this is all in for Randy Villegas. He is here with us for this whole hour, and it is sponsored by a number of Indivisible groups from Northern California. We've got them listed here. I'm going to move through this opening pretty quickly because the main event really is being able to spend time with Randy. But we're in the opening piece here. Anna is going to introduce Randy, and then he's going to give some opening remarks. We'll have a moderated question and answer period. I'll start with some questions for Randy. We'll have an opportunity for you in the chat to add questions that you would like him to answer. And then towards the end, we're going to talk about ways for you to get involved and volunteering for the campaign. And we will close by 8 o'clock. We do have a few simple ground rules. You're probably pretty familiar with them. Please use the chat, as Anna said, to introduce yourself. And please keep yourself on mute throughout the meeting. As you well know, when we've got a big group, if we have background noise, it's really difficult for people to hear. Also, please use the chat function to ask questions. And if you see a question that you like or you want asked, you can react to that in a sense to vote for the questions that you like. You can do that by adding a thumbs up or a check mark. We're not making any promises about which or how many questions we're going to be able to take. We just don't know. I'm sure we'll be limited to some degree. I also wanted to say a word about that money thing. The main thing is we're really glad that you're here to meet Randy. That's the key thing. We want you to get to know him, get excited about him, get excited about his campaign. Yes, we are also working to raise money for his campaign, but just because you're here, there is no requirement for you to donate. Okay, so we want to settle that right from the beginning. However, if you are able to give, no amount's too small. There are some limits on what amounts are too large, but if you want to test those limits, we're happy to talk to you about it and let you know what the law is. So far, we have managed to raise over $25,000 leading up to this event, with donations ranging from $6 to $2,500. And with that, I want you to meet a couple of people. Charlie Varon is with us tonight. He is going to be talking to you about why it's important to donate to Randy's campaign, what that means, and to encourage you to help us push that $25,000 number even higher this evening. And Anna Timmer is here, and she's here to introduce Randy. Anna, I've known for about 6 months. She is a powerhouse activist. She is also, so importantly, a leading member of La Raza Indivisible. And you need to know that in the past cycles, election cycles, there was no Indivisible group in California 22. Now there is. La Raza Indivisible has been instrumental in not only in endorsing Randy, but in reaching out to Indivisible National to get them to endorse Randy as well. So we've really got folks on the ground with Indivisible that are doing this work, and Anna is really leading that charge. And I want to turn it over to you with my gratitude, and also to allow you to introduce us to Randy.
Thank you, Tom. Good to see so many of you that I've talked to through the months, and always a pleasure to talk about Randy Villegas. So welcome everybody to the exciting world of California's 22nd Congressional District and the Democratic candidate I couldn't be more proud and excited about, Randy Villegas. Now, CD-22 is a huge district stretching from Fresno all the way to Bakersfield. It's currently held by Republican David Valadao, who has been a very, very hard seat to unseat over the years. But I believe with all my heart that our blue wave is headed straight to David Valadao's office this November. Valadeo has heartlessly betrayed his constituents and this country. His district depends on Medicaid more than any congressional district in the nation. To get elected, he swore to his constituents he would not cut Medicaid. But tragically, he became one of three of the deciding votes in the House to pass the big ugly bill, a bill that stripped healthcare and food assistance from many of the people who desperately need it, because these are the survivors of generations of institutional exploitation and neglect. So they really needed these services, and he cut them anyways. And as if that wasn't enough, there's more. The same bill poured billions more into ICE. Keep in mind, CD-22 is roughly 73% Hispanic, and California's three largest detention centers now sit adjacent to this district. People in 22 are worried, jaded, exhausted, and feel like politicians are crooks that lie and are only self-serving. But now, thank God, this year we can bring them real hope. Not in the form of a billionaire or celebrity, not in the form of a career politician. Hope is here in the form of a humble professor, a son of immigrants, a son of the Central Valley, a candidate that refuses to take corporate PAC money and corrupt dollars so that he can remain free to serve his people. His name is Randy Villegas. But you can't mistake Randy's humility for weakness. Over the last year, I've watched Randy grow into a powerhouse of an advocate for his community. He speaks boldly for justice, he speaks unapologetically for working families, and he refuses to let people of the Central Valley be ignored anymore. Powerful political organizations lined up against him in the primary. The DCCC endorsed someone else, but Randy believed in the people, and the people believed in Randy, and together they carried him to victory by nearly 5 points in June. That's what happens when a movement becomes bigger than the political establishment. You see, Randy isn't running for Congress because he wants another title after his name or he wants power for himself. He's running because he loves his people, and he wants power for them, and that starts at the national scale. With all the injustices and destruction we're seeing in Washington right now, I think we could all use a leader willing to walk into those halls of Congress with courage, conviction, and a commitment to the values of the country that we stand for. Now, some of you have been part of the story of CD-22 for a long time, and some of you are just joining us. But what makes this year so exciting is that the electoral landscape has completely changed. Prop 50 has given us a 5-point boost. Valadeo and Trump have alienated many of their voters. Grassroots organizations across the district are now in full bloom. La Raza Indivisible saw what Randy was building and proudly endorsed him in the primary, and Indivisible National followed suit. Okay, now let's talk a bit about the state of play in this election. For years, we've had two big challenges in CD-22. First, we haven't had a candidate people naturally gravitated towards. Second, we couldn't reach enough voters across a large district to get them mobilized. But this year, the first problem is gone. People love Randy, and you will see why when you meet him tonight. I've watched Trump voters spend an hour in a room with him and walk out supporting Medicare for all. I watch people come into that room as skeptics and leave asking how they can volunteer for the cause. It almost feels miraculous, but I see now it's not a miracle. It's what happens when someone genuinely speaks to people's struggles instead of doing politics as usual. What happens when someone of the people stands up to represent the people. Randy is young and Latino, just like the people of CD-22. He lives and breathes their struggle. Now, one super interesting fact about CD-22 is the average age of the district is only 31 years old. That's wild to me. Now, guess how old Randy is? You guessed it. Randy is also 31 years old. He truly represents this district. Randy is working truly tirelessly to do his part. So now the second problem, reaching every voter that needs to be reached. Nobody, not even Randy, can do this alone. The district is enormous. There are thousands and thousands of voters who still haven't had the opportunity to hear his message, not because they wouldn't embrace it, but simply because no one has reached them yet. And that's where we come in. We need to do everything we can to make sure every voter possible in this district has the opportunity to hear Randy's message so he can walk into the halls of Congress and bring hope and justice home for all of us. And with that, it was my tremendous pride, tremendous hope, and tremendous gratitude that I get to introduce you to our next congressman for California's 22nd Congressional District, Randy Villegas. Good to see you, Randy.
Good to see you as well, Anna. Thank you so much. And just a huge round of applause to all the incredible work that you've been leading along with La Raza Indivisible. It's an honor to have your support, and thank you for putting your faith in us since the very beginning. To those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I'm Dr. Randy Villegas. I am a professor and auto repair shop owner, and with your support, your next member of Congress here in California's 22nd District. And I'm running for Congress because I love the Central Valley. We're the farm workers who get up at the crack of dawn to feed the rest of the country and the rest of the world, even though sometimes we struggle to feed ourselves. Our energy workers keep the lights on, not just in Bakersfield, but across the entire country. And even though we work hard every single day, so many of us are struggling to get by. And I know what that struggle feels like personally. I'm the son of immigrants from Mexico, my dad from Michoacan, my mom from Guerrero, and I grew up in a working class family in Bakersfield, working every Sunday, getting up at 6 a.m. to go work at the swap meet and later at my family's auto repair shop. And as I got older, I learned to love school, both because I was hungry for knowledge and also because I was hungry for food. And that was one of the places that I knew I would have a warm, fresh meal thanks to free and reduced breakfast and lunch programs that I wouldn't be here without today. And so, even though we grew up poor, I had a childhood that my parents could only dream of. I got to participate in my school's marching band where I was drum captain. I got to do cross country and wrestling and football. And I got to meet the love of my life in high school, my wife, Karina. And, I was the first in my family to go to college and university at Bakersfield College, CSUB, excuse me. And then by the grace of God, I got a full ride scholarship to get my PhD at UC Santa Cruz. And even when I got into Santa Cruz, I thought about why do I have to leave the Valley? Why don't we have a UC Bakersfield so I can continue to stay and work here at home? Because in college, I started getting involved in community organizing and journalism, looking at all the inequalities that we see in education, in water access, pesticides, and so many other issues. And I knew even though I was going to Santa Cruz, my heart was always back here in the Valley. And in fact, my dissertation research was actually focused on studying the political participation of youth from mixed status families, where one or both parents or multiple family members might be undocumented. And ultimately, it's the Valley that brought me back. And, they say it takes a village, but we know it takes a valley to do everything. And I wouldn't be here without the Valley that raised me. And, it was politics that even drove my decision to get involved in community organizing around immigration and healthcare issues and education in Kern County. And it was during that time in graduate school that I actually considered dropping out of my program. It was 2020, COVID hit and devastated so many of our families. I tragically lost my grandmother to COVID. And I thought about dropping out because my family's business was struggling, right? As you can imagine, not a lot of people were traveling, so not a lot of people were getting their cars fixed. And unfortunately, the Trump administration decided that we didn't qualify for the Paycheck Protection Program because we were an immigrant-owned business. Thankfully, there was a 1-year temporary position as a professor of political science. I was only 25 years old at the time. I didn't think I would get it, but I knew I had to try. And thankfully, I got it. The following year, I was rehired on a tenure track position. And I've been teaching as a professor of political science ever since at College of the Sequoias. And, still helping out my family's auto shop in every opportunity that I could. And then I found myself serving on the school board, preaching to my students to get involved beyond the classroom. I felt like I had to set that same example. And on that school board, I'm incredibly proud of the work that we've been able to do to raise our teachers' wages by over 10%, something that had never been done before. But not just our teachers, our classified employees, like our bus drivers, our nurses, our custodians, and some of the first faces our students see every single day. And now I'm running for Congress because the same programs that I grew up on that allowed me to get to where I am today, programs like Medicaid and WIC, are all being gutted by this administration to go give tax breaks to billionaires. And Congressman Valadao has continuously failed our communities and has failed to show up for our communities. He was the deciding vote on HR 1, this big bullshit bill, which is going to gut Medicaid by $880 billion to go give more tax breaks to billionaires, to people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, who don't need more money to go buy another private island. And, this is in the district with the most Medicaid recipients in the entire country. 2 out of every 3 of our constituents relies on Medicaid. And just like talked about earlier, Valadao said that he wasn't going to vote for this bill if it affected Medicaid in any way, and he lied straight to our faces, casting the deciding vote. And I told people the most ironic part about this vote is that he has a government-subsidized healthcare plan as a member of Congress that we pay for. And I think he needs to use that plan to schedule a physical to look for the spine that he's been missing these last few years, because we deserve a member of Congress who's actually going to stand up and fight for our communities every single day, like our lives depend on it. Here in the Central Valley and across our country, People shouldn't have to choose between paying their rent or going to the doctor. People should have to choose between their utilities. And one of my top priorities in Congress is absolutely going to be to reverse these cuts to Medicaid. But let's talk about where we are right now, where every year over 66,000 people die because they don't have health insurance or because they're underinsured, not because we couldn't treat them, not because we couldn't save them, but because of a system that denied them care. And that is why on day one, I will be a proud co-sponsor of Medicare for All, because I believe that healthcare is a human right. Nobody should have to choose between going to a doctor and paying their rent. Nobody should have to choose between rationing their insulin and paying their mortgage. And I'm here to say that nobody should have to fight cancer and their congressman at the same time. We deserve healthcare as a human right. And whether it's healthcare, whether it's housing, whether it's education, a lot of this comes back to the same corruption that is money in politics, right? Now, my mother always taught me growing up many dichos, many sayings of wisdom in Spanish. And the one that has stuck with me throughout this campaign trail is Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres, which translated to English means tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are. And the same thing can be said about politics. Tell me who you're taking money from and I'll tell you who you're taking orders from. That's why I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race since launching, and to this day that has never taken a corporate PAC check, and I never will, because I want to be accountable to our communities and not corporate interests. And meanwhile, Valadeo was funded by the same corporations who are ripping us off at the gas pump, at the grocery store, at the pharmacy. He has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from corporations like ExxonMobil, like Chevron, Shell. He took money from United Health, a corporation using AI algorithms to deny elderly people's claims so that they could continue to profit while our family members suffer. And to that, we say no more. People in my district will drive 7 to 8 hours to Tijuana to go get cheaper prescription drugs, to go get cheaper health care, cheaper dental care. And this shouldn't be happening in the richest country in the history of the world. But we know it's because Valadeo isn't working on behalf of the Central Valley. He's working on behalf of his corporate sponsors and his billionaire buddies and donors, because those are the people he actually works for. And I'm proud to share with you all, despite the fact that we have not taken a dime of corporate PAC money, we are in this fight. In fact, we just closed off our strongest fundraising quarter yet. We outraised Valadeo 2-1. This last quarter, we raised $1.3 million, and Republicans are in a panic. And we did that without taking a dime of corporate PAC money, thanks to the incredible support of folks like you who believe in a better vision for the Valley and a better vision for our country. And we know that we need to continue to reach voters all across the airwaves, all across the doors. In fact, in the primary election, we were outspent significantly. As mentioned earlier, we had some forces come into our race, like the DCCC, many super PACs that were spending millions and millions of dollars attacking me, uplifting my opponents. And despite that, we won decisively. And that was thanks to the incredible work of folks who pitched in, their dollars, their time, people who were writing postcards, people who were doing phone banking, people who came down the valley, who were knocking on doors. And so I'm so grateful to every single person who was alongside me, sacrificing their sweats and their sunscreen, especially in that moment where the sunscreen, gets in your eyes and you feel like crying. And then you hit that door of another voter who's excited and who just keeps you going. I won't forget Election Day Eve. I knocked on the door of a Republican family. I talked to the mom in the household, who told me the only time she sees Valadeo is on TV commercials and never actually in person, and how she was so grateful that I was there introducing myself to her, listening to her concerns, and she proudly shared that she was going to vote for me and get her whole family to vote for us as well. And it's our amazing volunteers who led incredible work. A 72-year-old woman in Fresno who had never voted before in her entire life, who was intimidated by the process, who didn't trust politicians, but after talking to our volunteers about our campaign, they actually registered that same day and voted for the first time in their lives. And that to me means so much to know that our campaign is activating people all across the Central Valley, and the results are showing. We won decisively in the primary. We just crossed over $3 million total raised in this election. And, we had to spend down to the primary because we had a very big primary fight. But thanks to folks like you, I know that we are going to have the resources that we need to muster this fight in November and not just flip this seat, but keep it in Democratic hands. So I'm proud to, share that we have the endorsements, folks like Dolores Huerta, who have been leading this fight even before I was born, Senator Bernie Sanders, the Progressive Caucus, the Hispanic Caucus, so many members of Congress who are ready to flip the seat. UAW, the nurses union, labor. I'm a proud CTA member myself. So shout out to all of my teachers and educators on the call, our nurses, and so many people who believe in a better vision for the Valley. And let me tell you, Republicans are panicking right now. For context, they have never gone under 52% of the share of the vote in a primary election. We currently have Valadeo at about 40% and the combined Democratic total at about 60%. So people are fired up and ready for change. But we also know we can't take that for granted. We have to knock on every door. We have to make every phone call and make sure that people know that we have to fight for the deal that we deserve. And we know Republicans are going to be flooding in outside money to try and protect Valadeo, to attack our campaign. But we know that no amount of money, will be able to stop a movement of people who believe in a better vision for our country, for the Valley, and for the world, to be honest, because the stakes couldn't be higher with everything that we are seeing going on across our country. But I couldn't be more motivated to be in this fight alongside all of you. And I'm just so grateful to every person who has joined us, who has believed in us, who will continue to be with us heading into November, because we know that this isn't a fight about left versus right. It's a fight about working families who've been left behind by politicians in both parties who sold us out to corporate interests, and who want to put them ahead of us. And we're here to fight for working families to make sure we have the deal that we deserve. And so thank you all so much for your incredible support. I'm happy to answer questions. And yes, just more than anything, thank you. And sorry, biggest portion of all I forgot to mention, Indivisible, right? Not only the amazing work that La Raza Indivisible did, and so honored to earn their endorsement early on, but National Indivisible, and so many of you came in so hard for us in the primary at a time when so many people decided to, endorse against. We had all these outside forces. A lot of people wrote off our campaign, and folks in Indivisible stepped up, leading phone banks, postcarding, donating, and making sure that we had everything that we needed to get across that finish line in the primary. And so I know that Indivisible is going to play an extremely crucial role as we head into November to flip this seat and really set us a new standard, right? Because it wasn't just, super PACs, the DCCC. It was a lot of forces against us that are afraid. I hope not because they don't like me personally, but because of what our race represents. The fact that we are here in a competitive district in a red to blue seat, fighting to flip this district with a campaign that is saying no to corporate PAC money, that is saying that we don't actually have to give in on many of these issues, that we can fight for our working families and always center them in decisions that we make. And that scares some people across the country. And I'm okay with that because I know that I'm not running for Congress because I want to be something. I'm running for Congress because I want to do something. And I want to continue to fight for working families across the Valley and across this country. So thank you all so much for your incredible support, and let's go win this together.
Randy, thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction, and just an exciting one. Really kind of a thrilling story. One question I wanted to ask is, if you think back, do you remember the moment when you decided, that's it, I'm running? What was the trigger that set you off on this?
There were two specific moments that I can think of. One was the November election in 2024, and just looking at the results, not just for this race, but across the country, and knowing what was to come for members of my family and our communities throughout the Valley, and just feeling that fear, and feeling that fear also turned to anger and motivation to say, I'm tired of seeing us lose this seat time and time again, and I just think we need to do something different. And I don't think I had fully committed to running. I was just very angry and emotional. I said, I'm going to do whatever I can do to help regardless. But then it was the lead up to this big BS bill, right? Where Valadeo was signing on to these letters, where we were leading town halls. I remember being at a town hall with Ro Khanna in Bakersfield, and then just thinking to myself, we shouldn't have to question whether our representative would do the right thing with this bill. We deserve better than that. People in the Central Valley work too damn hard to have somebody not show up for them. Valadeo has been elected to Congress since I graduated high school. He hasn't had a public face-to-face town hall in over a decade. And I don't know any job where if you don't show up, you continue to get rehired. And so we deserve someone who's actually going to show up for working families and fight. So those were the two moments that, for me, really made the decision to run.
Yeah. What would you say are the most important things that Congress needs to do, you on your constituents' behalf, that Congress needs to do for the people of California 22?
Yes, absolutely. Starting number one with reversing this big BS bill.
Mhm.
Nowhere across the country are we going to feel the impacts of this than in California 22. We're going to feel the most impact, not just because of the amount of Medicaid recipients, 2 out of 3, the amount of households that rely on SNAP, the amount of households that are already struggling. Many people working 2 to 3 jobs, just struggling to afford the gas in their cars, struggling to afford groceries, on top of the tariffs. Almost every single issue that you can think of across this country, we're on the front lines of in the Central Valley, from immigration raids to the environmental injustices, to the high rates of childhood asthma, cancer, health issues that we're facing here in the Central Valley. People know about Flint, Michigan, and the fact that the water there wasn't safe, but people don't know that about Arvin, California, or Porterville, or how we have communities in my district that in the year 2026 still don't have access to safe, affordable, and clean drinking water. And so it's all of these issues that are just compounded here in the Central Valley, that motivate me. And oftentimes, to be quite frank, we sometimes have Democrats who vote similar to Republicans on some of these issues. And so I think one lesson that we learned in 24 was we can't just offer people not Trump, or in this case, not Valadeo. We have to offer people something more, a vision to believe in. And that to me means fighting for universal health care, for universal child care, getting corporate PAC money out of politics, getting dark money out of politics, and ensuring that we have a government that's going to be accountable to us and not corporations.
Yeah, wonderful. I want to pause for one moment and bring Charlie Varon on because you mentioned fundraising, and you've also mentioned the amount of money. We need Charlie, though, not Madeline. If we can make that switch. There we go. And Charlie is here to talk to us a little bit about fundraising. And then, Randy, we're going to come right back to you in just a minute.
Well, it is thrilling to be here with you, with everybody, all of the Indivisibles from Northern California, and with our wonderful candidate, Randy Villegas. What a moment we find ourselves in. I am charged up. We are 18 months into this attempted hostile takeover of our country. We have been watching it. We have been taking action. We've been protesting. Many of us have been canvassing and phone banking and donating. We have been acting as though we are living through a 5-alarm emergency for our country, and we are. And we have also had our dark moments, each of us. This is a very difficult time to keep paying attention to the news. But when we take action, when we come together, something extraordinary happens. We've seen this in Minneapolis. We've seen this in many, many cities. And we're now seeing it with Randy's campaign in the Central Valley. The evil, the awfulness of what we are living through invites a response, and that response can be beautiful and powerful, and we have a chance to be part of it. I have an email box that gets bombarded with appeals for donations. They, frankly, do not make me happy. They make me feel overwhelmed. But when I am here with 200 people on a phone call, the power of collective giving is just wonderful. So I'm encouraging you, no pressure, but at the same time, it is an emergency, and the people of the Central Valley deserve a decent representative who will not screw them over. So yes, a little bit of pressure is not a bad thing. I'm encouraging you to click on the donate link. We have a goal of $50,000. We started the Zoom with about 25,000. We are already up to 29,000. So we are most of the way toward our goal. This money means a lot now. It means way more than if you wait till October to donate. This is the money that will help get the canvassers knocking on the doors. Elections, swing district elections will be won with conversations, face-to-face conversations on the phone, but there's nothing quite like the immediacy of a human being talking to you, acknowledging the crisis we're living through, and giving you the vision that Randy has just expressed. And let me just say, as somebody who has recently entered the Medicare age, seeing a 31-year-old candidate with the kind of vitality and vision that Randy has just shown us is thrilling. And I think it's going to be thrilling to thousands and thousands of voters, and we can win this seat. And all of us on this call have a chance to be part of it. I've seen people clicking that they've donated. I will close this pitch by saying, I invite you to think, how much can you comfortably give? Come up with a number. Okay, you've got that number. Now double it. And click on the link. Let's all help flip this district from red to blue and help Randy become the next representative representing this district that needs somebody who cares.
Thank you so much, Charlie. And let's make sure we bring Randy back because he is the star of the show here. And there we go. Perfect. Thanks, Charlie, for your encouragement and exhortations. Randy, you're doing something wonderful, but you're also part of a larger cohort, right? People worry about getting money out of politics, but you and others like you have said we don't have to wait. We can refuse to take that money now. We can make that choice available to people. You've talked about Medicare for all. And you're not the only candidate, thank God, who's running on that platform. But when you and other members of this wave that you're a part of get to DC, that's also going to require pushing the Democratic caucus to be bolder than they've been in the past. As you said, it's not enough to just say, these times are bad and we've got to push back on it, but we've got to do more than that. We've actually got to make things much better for people. What are your thoughts about who you will link arms with to make that happen? What's that effort going to look like in your vision?
Yeah, I'm so excited to be seeing, all these elections across the country and all this momentum across the country. I am willing to, work with anyone and everyone who wants to fight for a better vision for the Valley and for our country. And I know often the questions that get asked around whether we're talking about Medicare for all or universal childcare, the questions are, how are we going to pay for these things? I think we should be raising that same question as to why we're spending roughly $1 billion a day in this war in Iran that nobody asked for. But, let's talk about states that have already taken on this fight and won. New Mexico has universal child care. Vermont was able to figure this out. New York is now moving in this direction. It's not a question of whether we have the financial means to do these things. It's a question of whether we have leaders with the political clarity and the moral courage to actually fight for these things. And so I will partner with everyone who is willing to make sure that we can make these things a reality across the country. We need to actually be holding folks accountable. Our primary, in many ways, was illustrative of this fight for the soul of the Democratic Party. And I think we need to bring back the Democratic Party to its working class roots, to the party of FDR, to making sure that we have a new deal for the American people that guarantees jobs, childcare, wages, a humane immigration system, a place where people aren't afraid to organize and unionize in their workplace, a place where, teachers aren't being afraid of being fired for academic freedom, where nurses are actually able to care for their patients, and doctors are able to prescribe medications rather than health insurance companies and corporate CEOs. I dream of a Democratic Party and a future that is free from corporate PAC money and these influences. It's, the same politicians who take money from these health insurance companies that want to convince us we should be happy paying twice as much for healthcare as other countries across the world. It's the same, politicians who take money from PG&E and SoCal Edison who want to tell us, that they can't do anything about our utilities. And frankly, I think the American people can see through that, which is why you're seeing a momentum of, folks who are projecting dark money in politics. And I hope that we continue to build and grow this movement across the country in every district across the country. So willing to work with anyone and everyone. And that also includes Republicans. Full disclosure, I am the only Democrat and the only Latino on my school board. And despite that, we have been able to accomplish an increase in wages for our workers. I was able to actually make the motion to adopt our first ever Pride Month resolution, and I got it accepted unanimously in our school district. And again, it's showing folks that these things shouldn't be about partisan politics. It should be about who's fighting for working families. It's not this fight about left versus right. It really is working families versus politicians who have left us behind, right? Who've sold us out to corporate interests. So eager to fight with anyone and everyone. I've certainly been inspired by elections all across the country, both nationally and I will say also locally. So many of our school board members or city council members who do this work day in and day out without the glory. There's a saying that your first school board meeting you get sworn in, your next school board meeting you get sworn at. That was definitely the case for me. And we need to build the bench at every level of politics, at every level of governance, to make sure we have representatives who are fighting for our working families.
Yeah, fantastic. One of the difficulties, I think, in any political campaign, maybe especially in California 22, which is generally had lower levels of voting in many cycles, is just getting people connected to politics, right? They either just don't have the time, maybe they don't have the interest. In some cases, it's just too depressing and they don't want to engage. So a lot of people are pretty tuned out, and yet what goes on in Washington has a profound effect, as you're saying, on people's lives. Absolute impact. So how are you able to connect people to your campaign? You've been doing this really well. What's the kind of secret sauce for getting people to care about something that they either don't know about or they just haven't been engaged by before?
Yeah, I'll start off by saying, all those concerns are valid. And I tell those folks, people are valid to feel like the system is rigged against working class people. Whether it is healthcare, whether it's politics itself. I think a great example of this is, I specifically launched my campaign on April 14th last year. And the reason I did that was because it was my spring break for my full-time job. So I could take a day off, use my vacation, right? My spring break to launch the campaign, to do interviews, to do all the things I needed to do. But I remember taking my first trip to DC, and I met with a member of Congress who asked me, when are you going to quit your job? As if that was just that easy to do, right? I said, I've got to support a family. I've got to continue to pay the bills. And of course, I will commit myself 100% to the campaign trail and do everything I can, working weekends, doing campaigns of the day, grading at night. But it just made me realize, how hard it is for working class people. And so we are talking to folks in the Central Valley who are working 2 to 3 multiple jobs, who are struggling with childcare, who sometimes don't feel as if they have the capacity to tune into politics, right? That it is a struggle, and that is a valid struggle. And so, people come to politics because politics comes to them. And so I'm a firm believer that we need to knock on every door. We need to make every phone call. We've got to write every postcard, and we've got to talk to people who traditionally haven't been engaged by political campaigns. A very brief story, because I want to answer as many questions as I can. The first campaign that I worked on was a library initiative in Kern County, California. Our libraries were very underfunded, continue to be underfunded. My local branch was only open about 2 to 3 days a week. This was going to follow a similar library tax that Fresno passed, which would have allowed us to expand services to open 5 days a week. So I remember being super excited, got in my car, drove to the downtown office, and then picked up my packet. They trained me a little bit, and then I drove to this gated community on the other side of town that I had only been to in Halloween, when I was a kid, to get the king size candy bars, right? If you know, you know. And I remember knocking on doors. I'm talking to people about why they should support Measure F. And I started thinking to myself, why am I not knocking on doors in my own neighborhood? Why am I not talking to people who look like me, young people? And I come to find out it's because, campaigns are driven by dollars. And so campaigns target high propensity voters, people who are likely to be homeowners, who are likely to be older, more affluent. And so we end up with this very vicious catch-22 cycle where young people in low-end communities and renters don't vote because campaigns don't talk to them. But campaigns don't talk to them because they don't vote. And so, just like I tell my students, the solution has to be twofold. If you're a voter in one of these areas, you have to vote consistently and demand that these campaigns pay attention to you. But on the flip side, it's up to campaigns to invest the necessary dollars and resources into actually reaching out to those communities. And so I'm proud to share that, not only were we knocking on doors in places like Bakersfield and Fresno, we were knocking on doors in rural unincorporated communities like Kerman, California, like Pixley And people who had told us they had never had their door knocked on by a political campaign, they had never received a postcard or a phone call. And that just goes such a long way to folks who often feel like politics is disconnected from them because politicians and campaigns don't care. Where we are here to say, not only do we care, we are going to fight for you every single day, not just in the campaign trail, but when we get elected into office. So it's communicating with folks, it's reaching them where they're at, and talking about the issues that are important to them, and not assuming that we know that ourselves, but really listening with an intentional ear.
Yeah, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. Lori, you have been monitoring the chat for questions from the audience, the attendees here tonight. Do you have a question from chat for Randy?
Sure. One of the questions that's come up quite a bit is election security around ICE and what kind of role you think that might play, as also the role of Big Ag and other groups that might be working at the polls in the wrong way. Is there a plan for that, do you think, in the Valley?
Yeah,
To
and
protect
so
it, to protect your vote?
absolutely, and we're actively monitoring, the federal government. Even in the primary, Trump had announced that he was going to essentially have people in different counties monitoring these sorts of things. And on our campaign side, we have talked very strategically about how we can create, content and information to show folks that here in California, you can vote safely and securely from the comfort of your own home. But also making sure that we have, watchers at poll sites to cite out any sign of intimidation. I am very confident in, the ability of Dr. Shirley Weber, our Secretary of State, to make sure our elections run smoothly in California. But we know we can't take that for granted, and are just going to continue to monitor everything as we can. We have an amazing rapid response network in Kern County that has been really good about reporting any, sightings of ICE and going in to verify to not cause panic. In fact, we actually had them at our first town hall, which was not only a town hall, but a Know Your Rights training. And I adopted that from Congresswoman Ana Lilia Mejia in New Jersey, because we don't have to wait until 2026 or the elections or 2028 to empower our communities in this moment and to fight back.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Lori, do you have another question?
Yes, there's also been quite a few questions in various ways about the role of youth, not only in your vote, but in your volunteer. And is that the main demographic that you're seeing shifting that's going to be the difference this year? Or are there all other demographics that you're counting on to create that winning margin for you?
Yes, absolutely. And on paper, this should have been a Democratic seat a decade ago, even before Proposition 50. It's a strong Democratic majority, strong Latino majority, yet we have Valadeo in office. And so what we find is, voter turnout is key to our path to victory, and making sure that people, turn out to vote, but not just young people, not just Latinos, it's everybody. But I am very excited about those groups. Young people in Arvin, California, helped us canvass their entire city. We had volunteers as young as 15, 16. Pahua, one of our volunteers in Fresno, brought out her nieces in middle school to help us canvass. And just so many folks from all walks of life who are joining us to get out the vote. And what's really exciting is how people have increased. We certainly have a ways to go, and I think we can always increase turnout. But what we saw in this primary was extremely exciting, and also in Prop 50. For the first time I've ever seen in this district, voters ages 18 to 35 were actually outvoting the next age group, right? Latino voters, for the very first time in history in this district, actually made up a majority in the primary election, which is extremely exciting. And we want to make sure that we maintain this consistency of voting moving forward, right? That we let folks know it's important to vote in primaries, in midterms, in the general election, in special elections, any opportunity that we can to exercise our voices and our votes. Very excited about the support that we've seen across the political spectrum from independents, Democrats, and Republicans alike. Again, I'm very blunt when I talk about the issues to people in this district. Valley fever, cancer, diabetes, doesn't care who you voted for in the last election. It does not care what your party ID is. We know that everybody gets sick, which is why we need healthcare for all. Similarly, your mortgage, your utilities don't ask you for your party ID, and neither will this campaign, because we're focused on fighting for every working family across the district.
Thank you. And Lori, do you have another question?
I've had a couple of questions about policy. One was your approach to Supreme Court reform.
Yeah, I think it was roughly 100 years ago where FDR was staring down the court and they were trying to, strike down several New Deal programs. And we had a showdown between the president and the U.S. Supreme Court. And he proposed, term limits for justices and replacing justices who are over a certain amount or certain age, I should say. And I think we need to lead with that same boldness moving forward. So I do favor court reform. We have seen Supreme Court justices who have received bribes from GOP mega donors. Justice Clarence Thomas, his wife, who was at the Capitol on January 6th. If that's not a conflict of interest, somebody please tell me what is. But I absolutely think we need to do everything in our power, and Congress has that power to expand or shrink the Supreme Court. And I think we need to be bold about that, right? We need to be realistic about the fact that we have a court that is not willing to work for us, that is, striking down many provisions. And I do not have faith in, even some of the swing justices to make the right decisions at times. So I think we need to do everything possible. I have heard proposals of everything from 12-year term limits to, get rid of the outsized influence that Supreme Court justices have. Lifetime term limits are not something I don't think should be available. And, I'm open to any sort of, options. I think we need to use every tool possible at our disposal as Democrats to take on this administration.
And I think, Lori, we've got probably time for one more question from
A
the
lot of people
attendees.
have asked questions about the district itself. What's the position, or what's the situation around the LGBTQ community, for instance, or how many people are on Medicare, how many people are on SNAP benefits and Medicaid, those kinds of more demographic questions.
Yeah, so it is now the most Latino district in California as a result of Prop 50. It stretches as far south as Bakersfield, Arvin, Lamont, to as far north as West Fresno, and some of those communities like Carmen, San Joaquin, Huron. We have about a 4% African American population, a notable and sizable API community, Filipinos, specifically in Delano as well. We have a large Filipino community, such a historic site of our African American community in Allensworth. We have a large Sikh Punjabi community as well, spread throughout the district. And so to me, it's the beauty of America and really what our country stands for. We have LGBTQ centers in, I think, Kern, Tulare. There might be one just outside of it. But proud that many of our young leaders have also been at the forefront of making sure that our schools, our cities, are welcoming to all communities from all walks of life. Just like I made the motion to adopt our Pride Month resolution, I know the city of Delano has done the same. Leaders in the city of Bakersfield and so many others are pushing for change continuously.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to take one more break here to bring Charlie back, if that's all right, and then Randy, you and I will continue a bit to close things out. But Charlie, welcome back. Can you give us an update and an exhortation?
We are doing great, way beyond anything I could have hoped for. But that doesn't mean we should rest on our laurels. We are at over 36,000 of our $50,000 goal. I'm just looking here. It says 36619. That's amazing. More than $10,000 on this call alone. We are within less than $14,000 of our goal. So if you want to donate again, that is permissible under my dictate. I say you may. I say yes. I say it is fine. I say if you get another number that flies into your head, it could be 500, 1,000, could be $2,000. That is the number you should donate. If you do not get that number, make one up anyway. Also, after this call, you're going to get an email, and I want you to think of 3 people you know who would like to be part of this, who you would like to invite to match your donation, to use what we call donation tripling. We all want to do our part. It is a gift to give people a chance to be part of the change that we need to see. We have an inspiring candidate. We have a thrilling candidate, and what an opportunity for us to help change our country, help change what's going on. The misrepresentation that Valadeo has been doing for so long I mean, I've been talking on the phone to voters in District 22 since 2018, and I am ready for David Valadeo to find another line of work. I think he might do better at something that doesn't involve taking away medical care from people. That could be his new calling. So give again if you can. Think of 3 people you'd like to encourage to be part of this. What an opportunity we have to help an incredible candidate, a candidate who has vitality and vision. We are at a, I am feeling so much happier so much more hopeful than I did when before this call. So thank you, Randy. Thank you to all everyone working on his campaign, to all of you who've donated, all of you who are phone banking and who are canvassing and who are going to enlist your friends. We can do this. We can do it together. We can play our part in helping elect Randy. And thank you.
So
The
much.
donation link has just been put in the chat one more time.
There we go. Perfect.
We're over 40,000 now.
Amazing. Randy, couple more questions, and then we'll kind of wrap things up here.
Absolutely.
Would love. So one of the things I don't know that you've said this specifically. I think Anna may have kind of intimated it as well. You've got to have a tremendous, coming off of Charlie's excitement, you've got to have generated a tremendous amount of excitement in the district in the primary for you to win by 5%, for you to have people engaged in politics who weren't engaged in politics before, who actually believe, not that you're conniving or that you're, going to turn your back on them or disappear and never show up again, but actually that you're going to deliver for them. Can you tell us a story or two about what that excitement has felt like to you or for your voters there?
Yeah, it has meant everything to me. I remember being at our victory party, and we didn't know the result was going to be called. We just knew we were ahead on election night, and just looking out at the crowd and seeing so many folks who had sacrificed, their sweat, their sunscreen, their time. I remember looking at my dad in the crowd and him kind of being watery-eyed, and then me having to look away because I was starting to get choked up. But more than anything, it was meeting people at the doors and hearing their stories. I'll never forget one of our first town halls in Armona, California, a very small community, and speaking to a 4th grader who was asking me what we could do about ice raids. I remember speaking to a farm worker from Arvin, California, who has to drive 4 hours to go see a specialist for her daughter with special needs, and her being terrified about losing healthcare coverage, and the fact that her employer didn't even want to give her time off to allow her to do that. I think about the couple that I talked to in Hanford, a senior couple who relies on Social Security, who relies on Medicaid, and where the husband is actually battling cancer, traveling to Fresno every week to go get treatment. And I remember just feeling so frustrated and so angry that my opponents were not hearing these stories of people in the Central Valley. They refused to show up to any forums and debates throughout the district. And in fact, we said, if you want to represent the community, if you want to have the privilege to fight for a community, you should have the respect to show up for those communities. And that's just what we continue to do. And so when the nights were long, when the mornings were early, it was those stories of people in the Central Valley who kept me grounded and who kept me going. And I still continue to work both at the shop as a professor, juggling the campaign trail. But I said, if people in my community can work 2 to 3 jobs, I have nothing to complain about. And in fact, it's those same experiences that allow me to actually relate to what people are experiencing on the ground. And it's the fact that I don't take corporate PAC money that actually lets me talk about these issues honestly and earnestly, because I don't have to be accountable to those corporate donors or lobbyists or special interest groups. The only people that I will be accountable to are the people of the Central Valley, who deserve someone who's going to fight for them, who deserve a leader, right? And I recognize that the weight of this race and this moment, not just in our district, but what it means for the country to help us take back the House and take back the gavel to put a check on this administration. But just what it means beyond that. I've gotten messages from people across the country, people across the world who are watching our campaign, which seems insane to me. But just I'm so grateful to every single person who has donated $1, who has donated an hour, a minute of their time to volunteer for our campaign. Know that every single dollar that you donate, every hour you volunteer, every house that you knock, every phone call that you make, every postcard you write is going to help us be that margin of victory in the general election, to make sure that we have accountability in politics, to make sure we have a new wave of leadership across this country and across the Valley. There are so many stories, and I'm so grateful to young folks and people who say, your story is inspirational, Randy. But I tell people, there are so many stories just like mine in the Central Valley waiting to be told. But we have too much talent that's trapped in poverty. And right now, an administration that's working to make life hell for our communities and to take away the same programs that allowed me to get to where I am today. And so we know this fight is about not just reversing the things that this administration has done. It's about fighting for something better. It's about fighting for a future for our country. So I'm honored to be in this fight with you. And with this call to action, if you can donate what you can, whether that is your time, your money, anything that you can to help us in this fight, I'm eternally grateful just to each and every single one of you. All the amount of support that you all have given already, all the amount that we are going to continue to fight in this district. I'm ready to continue to work hard every single day and do everything I can to make sure we have the representation and the deal that we deserve.
Thank you so much. I've got one last question for you, and it's playing off of what you just were saying, which is, and this is to everybody in the audience, but I'm assuming you, like myself, have been really moved by, Randy, by what you've said, very much inspired, very excited by everything that you've said. And I'm confident that anybody who actually has a chance to be in this kind of forum, or can meet you at their door, or can see you at a gathering or something like that and have this conversation, would be so bowled over that they would absolutely want to vote for you and be committed to doing so. However, you can't be at everybody's doorstep. You can't be in every community. There just isn't enough time in the day, even if you weren't working other jobs, right? That is going to take the kind of volunteering that you're talking about. It's going to take people who are willing to be, in effect, kind of a surrogate for you, and the intermediary who can help connect people not only to you, but to what you stand for and what you're willing to fight for. And so my question is, when volunteers do knock on doors, ask somebody for money, talk on phones, whatever it might be, on your behalf, what's the most important message you want them to convey? They're not going to have an hour like we've had to get to know you. They'll have maybe 5 minutes or 3 minutes or something like that. As your representative, what do you want us to say?
Yeah, I would share with them that, this is a campaign that is doing things differently and that is centering working people in every decision that we make. The fact that we are the only campaign that doesn't take corporate PAC money is something that has been, a game changer for so many folks. We've never had a campaign at this level running completely corporate free. In fact, all credit to one of our super volunteers, Lynn, who had the amazing idea of putting my opponent's corporate PAC donations on our clipboard and just showing folks, this is who they're taking money from, this is who they're working for, and here's our column with a bunch of zeros, because we are working for the people, and that is increasingly important for people to know. And it's also letting people know that I'm a son of the Central Valley, right? I wouldn't be here where I am today without the Central Valley, and I love it almost more than anything in the world, except for my wife and my family. But it's thanks to the Central Valley that I met my wife in high school, and so it's just letting people know that we care, that I'm here to fight for you, that I'm here to fight alongside you, because we need everybody in this fight. And so it's letting people know, we are someone who's rooted in the community. I attended local public schools. I continue to work in our community, serving our students, in our communities, helping get people back on the road. And that is what I will do in Congress for our country and for the Valley. And I did see somebody, excuse me, put it up in the chat. For those of you who are following us on social media, you may have seen this already, but House Majority PAC just released a poll that shows us leading Valadeo by 4 points. And so, we are confident but not complacent. We know the only poll that actually matters is on election day. And so I am always going to run with a mindset that we are 15 to 20 points down, because that's the kind of work ethic that we need to have heading into this election. We know we can't take anything for granted. And in fact, we have to make sure that not only do we flip the seat, we keep it in Democratic hands. And, it should be a safe blue seat, and we can make it so with all your support and with all your help. So that way we can continue to support candidates all across this country who are going to fight for a better vision.
Randy, thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I can't thank you enough. I
Thank you, Tom
think
and
it's
Charlie
probably
and everyone.
echoed by everybody here. I want to bring Charlie back one last time to give you one more pitch, and then I think we're probably going to ask people to unmute themselves and thank you themselves. But Charlie, if you want to give us one last chance to open our hearts and our wallets.
Yes, well, I am bowled over. We are way exceeding expectations. We are at 44, I was about to say 44,000. We're at $45,254. We're less than $5,000 away from our $50,000 goal. We have raised about $20,000 in the last hour. Money which is going to help flip congressional seat District 22 and going to help bring a Democratic majority to the House of Representatives, put the gavel in the hand of a Democrat, and put the brakes on this MAGA insanity that we have been enduring. It's going to take a generation to revert, maybe less with leaders like Randy. No pressure, Randy. But it's going to take a long time to get out of the ditch that we have been drawn into. But let's start now. So thank you, Randy. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, all of the Indivisibles. Thank you for your activism. Thank you for your donations. This is a team sport. And what a team we have. I am so, so glad to be part of it. Thank you all for donating. It is not too late to give another donation. And again, we can go beyond 50,000. We can get to 60,000 and beyond when we each enlist 3 friends. Those of you who are ambitious can go for 4 friends or 40. We have a role to play in this unfolding drama. We each have a part to play. Let us each find our part.
Yeah. Charlie, thank you so much. Paul, if you could just remove the spotlight so we can see everybody. And I'd encourage you to unmute yourselves. And if you want to offer your thanks to Randy for being here, you can do so now, and then we'll close. Or you can applaud silently. But Randy, thank you so much for being here. And thank you to everybody who's been here. Thank you to everybody who's donated. Thank you for everybody who's thinking about volunteering.
Thank you, Randy.
We are so grateful for all of you.
Thank you, Randy. I'm a big fan.
Yeah. Thanks so much. And we will see you at the doors and on the phones. Thanks so much,
Thank you all
everybody.
so much for your incredible support. We
I'll
can't
be
do
there.
without you. Honored to have you in this fight.
Thank you, Randy.
Night, everybody.